Shaunie O'Neal has finally broken her silence, and what she just revealed could shake the very foundation of her marriage to Pastor Keion Henderson. For years, they were the blueprint, the image of faith, love, and power perfectly intertwined. A union that seemed blessed, flawless, and divinely orchestrated. But now, everything the public thought they knew about this kingdom couple is being questioned. Because behind the sermons, the lavish wedding photos, and the Sunday smiles, a storm was brewing, one that no one saw coming. Late-night calls, a mysterious woman in the shadows, church insiders whispering that the truth was far more complicated than anyone imagined. And after months of silence, Shaunie herself has stepped forward. Not with gossip, not with anger, but with words so powerful, so piercing, that the entire internet stopped to listen. What she said about loyalty, love, and betrayal didn't just expose what may have been happening behind closed doors. It exposed something much deeper, the unspoken pressure of being the perfect pastor's wife in a world where image is everything. In this video, we're diving deep into how the fairy tale turned into headlines, how whispers inside the Lighthouse Church became full-blown speculation, and how one viral statement from Shaunie has turned faith and fame into a public reckoning. Because this isn't just another celebrity love story gone wrong. This is about power, reputation, and the painful truth that sometimes the people preaching healing are the ones most in need of it. Stay tuned, because the truth behind Shaunie O'Neal's revelation might just change everything we thought we knew about love, loyalty, and the pulpit. When Shaunie O'Neal walked down the aisle in 2022 to marry Pastor Keion Henderson, it looked like a divine reset, the long-awaited happy ending after years of public heartbreak. To the world, this wasn't just a wedding. It was a redemption story. Shaunie, the powerhouse producer behind Basketball Wives, had built her own empire from the ashes of a highly publicized divorce. She was a woman who turned pain into purpose, who redefined strength and grace in the spotlight. Her life was an open book, one that had seen betrayal, rebuilding, and rebirth. So when she found love again, the world celebrated with her. And Keion Henderson, he wasn't just any man. He was a pastor with charisma, vision, and a fast-growing ministry known as the Lighthouse Church. His sermons drew crowds across the country. Young believers, influencers, and celebrities all tuned in to hear his passionate words about faith, purpose, and perseverance. He preached about restoration, healing, and divine order. And for many, he was a modern-day spiritual rock star. So when their paths aligned, it felt like destiny. Two visionaries, one from the world of entertainment and the other from the pulpit, joining forces under God's blessing. Their wedding was the kind of event people couldn't stop talking about, a breathtaking ceremony held on the island of Anguilla, surrounded by family, celebrities, and clergy. Every photo radiated love, unity, and luxury. It was more than a marriage. It was a brand, a message, proof that faith and fame could coexist beautifully. They were dubbed the power couple of purpose. Magazines praised their union as a divine partnership. Instagram was flooded with clips of their smiling faces, praying together, laughing together, leading together. For a while, it looked perfect. Shaunie's followers admired how she had seemingly found peace. The woman who once endured public pain had now found public joy. And Keion, the eloquent preacher with a message of transformation, had finally found a queen who matched his fire and faith. From the outside, they were unstoppable. But behind the filters, behind the sermons, behind the curated image of a God-centered marriage, something subtle was shifting. It started with quiet distance, a different tone in their social media posts, a pause where there used to be laughter, the kind of changes you can't quite define, but you can feel. Shaunie, known for her discernment and poise, didn't say much, but those closest to her noticed that her sparkle was dimming. Her once frequent posts about love, marriage, and partnership slowly faded, and yet no one wanted to believe it. Not her fans, not her friends, not even her church family. Because to admit that something was wrong would be to question the image everyone had invested in, the fairy tale they wanted to believe was real. But deep down, Shaunie knew. Something wasn't aligning. And as whispers began to surface, whispers about long nights, mysterious phone calls, and a woman who seemed a little too present in the church's inner circle, the fairy tale started to feel more like a performance, a beautiful illusion, beginning to crack. At first, it was easy to ignore. Every marriage has seasons. That's what Shaunie told herself. After all, being married to a man leading one of the fastest-growing ministries in America came with pressure. The Lighthouse Church was expanding, the cameras were always rolling, and the weight of public expectation was enormous. But then came the silence, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful, but heavy. Shaunie's social media, once filled with affectionate captions and heart emojis, grew quiet. Her posts shifted from joyful snapshots of her marriage to vague spiritual reflections about endurance, faith, and discernment. To most people, they were just harmless quotes. But to those paying attention, her tone had changed. The woman who used to post videos of her and Keion praying together was now sharing verses about betrayal, trust, and divine timing. Then came the missing wedding ring. Fans noticed it first. In several recent appearances, Shaunie's left hand was bare. No diamond, no band, just silence. When followers commented, asking if everything was okay, she never responded. She didn't have to. The absence spoke volumes. Behind closed doors, tension had begun to surface. Sources close to the couple revealed subtle shifts, missed calls, unreturned texts, canceled appearances. The lighthearted chemistry that once defined them now felt forced. And for Shaunie, those instincts, that quiet intuition, began to grow louder, because she'd been here before. She knew what distance felt like. She knew what emotional withdrawal looked like. And though she hoped this was just a rough patch, her spirit told her something was off. Still, as a woman of faith, she tried to handle it privately. She prayed. She journaled. She leaned on scripture, but the signs kept coming. Rumors began swirling within the church community, whispers about late-night counseling sessions, private ministry meetings, and one woman who seemed to be at every church event, even those where she wasn't officially listed on the staff. The woman wasn't famous. She wasn't someone the public would recognize. But in the halls of the Lighthouse Church, people knew her face. Always around. Always near Keion. Always available. At first, Shaunie brushed it off as gossip, the kind that often follows high-profile pastors and their wives. But as the same name kept surfacing in different conversations, something inside her shifted. Then came the Instagram message, a direct message from an anonymous account that read, "Sis, this woman is not who she says she is. She's been seen leaving his office late multiple times, even after Wednesday Bible study. Be careful who you trust." Shaunie could have ignored it. She could have blocked the sender and kept scrolling. But instead, she paused. Something about the timing, the tone, felt too specific to dismiss. So, quietly, she started to pay attention. She reviewed old photos, event schedules, and videos from ministry functions. And there, in the background, that same woman kept appearing. Always nearby, always watching, always smiling. It wasn't just coincidence. It was a pattern. The whispers grew louder. Some staffers even hinted that this woman had special access to the pastor, the kind of access that went beyond professional boundaries. But Shaunie wasn't impulsive. She wasn't the type to explode or accuse. She was strategic, discerning. And so instead of confronting anyone, she began documenting and screenshots messages, travel itineraries. If there was a truth buried beneath the surface, she was going to find it. And soon she did. Because the deeper she looked, the clearer it became that her intuition wasn't wrong. There was something, or someone, interfering in her marriage. But what she didn't yet know was that the most shocking revelation wouldn't come from outside the church. It would come from within, from someone who had seen everything and was finally ready to speak. It started with whispers, the kind of whispers that float through church corridors, tucked behind polite smiles and "God bless yous." The kind of whispers that sound like prayer requests, but feel like warnings. At first, Shaunie brushed them aside. When you're married to a public figure, gossip becomes background noise. She'd learned that long ago from her time in Hollywood. Still, something about these whispers felt different. Personal, consistent, and far too specific to ignore. They weren't coming from outsiders or bitter ex-members. They were coming from inside the ministry, from people she trusted. Names started circulating, times, places, comments that didn't sit right. And one woman's name came up again and again. She wasn't famous, but she was known in the Lighthouse Church community, a sharply dressed, soft-spoken woman in her 30s, always at the front of the room. Always near Pastor Keion, always smiling but never saying much. She's just dedicated, some would say. Always helping, always available. But to others, her dedication felt a little too personal. And as the dots began to connect, Shaunie's unease grew into something else, quiet suspicion. She had spent years around power and publicity. She knew what it looked like when a story didn't add up. Late-night meetings, sudden work trips that didn't match the calendar, conversations that ended when she walked into the room. Still, Shaunie tried to push down her doubts. She wanted to believe in her husband, in her marriage, in the covenant they had built before God and witnesses. But her faith was being tested in ways she never expected. And then the message came. The one that changed everything. A burner account on Instagram. No profile picture. No followers. Just a single message. He's not who you think he is. Check the calendar from last month. Ask about the executive dinner. And whatever you do, don't ignore this. Shaunie stared at her phone, frozen. It was the kind of message no one ever wants to receive, but can't stop reading once they do. Her heart raced as she went through her husband's travel schedule. Meetings that were supposed to be in Houston didn't line up with the photos he'd posted from Dallas. Restaurant receipts didn't match the supposed ministry dinners she'd been told about. And there it was again, the same woman's name listed as assistant on multiple bookings. Still, she said nothing. Not yet. Because if there was one thing Shaunie had learned from a lifetime in the spotlight, it was that patience exposes what pride tries to hide. So, she quietly gathered information. She started taking screenshots of messages and photos. She logged dates of canceled events. She even saved copies of receipts she found left on the kitchen counter, each one telling a story that didn't quite match the official version. And as she pieced together the fragments, the picture became painfully clear. There was a line being crossed. The moment she realized it wasn't paranoia came when she stumbled upon a group photo from a church banquet. Dozens of smiling faces, and there, just barely visible behind her husband, was the same woman again. Too close, too familiar, too comfortable. That was the moment Shaunie stopped hoping she was wrong. Still, she kept her composure. No public meltdowns, no messy posts, just silence. The kind that unnerves people because it means you're planning, not panicking. But what Shaunie didn't know was that someone else had been watching too. Someone much closer to the situation than she realized. An insider. A staff member. Someone who had seen it all unfold behind the scenes and could no longer stay quiet. Because for every secret the pulpit hides, there's always someone in the pews who knows the truth. And when that truth finally came to light, it didn't just confirm Shaunie's suspicions, it shattered everything she thought she knew about her marriage. The truth didn't come from a headline or a gossip site. It came from the inside, from someone who'd been sitting quietly in the background all along. A longtime administrative staffer at the Lighthouse Church, known for her loyalty to Shaunie, finally reached her breaking point. She had watched the rumors swirl, seen the late-night meetings booked under vague titles, and witnessed the subtle power shifts inside the ministry. For months, she had kept silent, torn between protecting her job and protecting a woman she deeply admired. But when she saw Shaunie's pain and the quiet unraveling of her joy, she couldn't keep quiet anymore. According to sources close to the situation, this staffer privately met with Shaunie, her eyes filled with tears, holding a small notebook she had been keeping for nearly a year. Inside were records, dates, schedules, and travel notes that didn't match what the church's public calendar showed. Off-site meetings, dinner reservations for 2, phone calls blocked from official logs, flowers sent to the church, not addressed to First Lady Shaunie, but to someone identified only by the initials KS. That was the moment Shaunie's suspicions turned into confirmation. The woman everyone had whispered about, the one always at Keion's side, always just out of frame, was real. Her involvement, whatever the exact nature of it was, had crossed far beyond professionalism. Then came the ultimate betrayal. When the church organized its annual leadership retreat, Shaunie's name was mysteriously missing from the guest list. She was told there was limited space, but days later, social media posts from the event began circulating, and there, in a smiling group photo right beside Pastor Keion, was that same woman. That image was the final straw, because this wasn't about gossip anymore. It wasn't about jealousy or speculation. It was about being deliberately excluded from a space that was supposed to represent partnership, ministry, and unity. For Shaunie, that retreat photo said everything words couldn't. She didn't rage. She didn't post a rant. Instead, she gathered herself with grace and began preparing for something bigger, her response. Weeks later, Shaunie appeared on stage at a women's empowerment summit in Atlanta. Many expected her to cancel, to retreat into silence. But instead, she arrived radiant, confident, and without her wedding ring. When she took the mic, the room fell silent. Her words weren't bitter. They were deliberate, sharp, and filled with layered truth. "I've learned," she said slowly, "that silence doesn't always mean peace, and loyalty doesn't always mean respect." The audience gasped. Phones came out. Her every word was live-streamed and clipped into viral moments across social media. There comes a time when you stop praying for change and start being the change. I believed in love. I believed in covenant. I believed in ministry. But belief without boundaries is how we lose ourselves. And I almost lost me. Then came the line that broke the internet. I covered him in prayer while he covered someone else in lies. That single sentence set the internet on fire. Within hours, it became the quote of the week. Pastors' wives reposted it. Women's ministries turned it into sermons. Commentators called her a symbol of spiritual resilience. Shaunie didn't name names. She didn't have to. Her truth was powerful enough without the details. And that was her brilliance. She let the world connect the dots on its own. The world waited for Pastor Keion's response. And eventually, it came. But not how anyone expected. He stepped onto his pulpit one Sunday morning, his tone somber, his eyes weary. Everyone knew this wasn't just another sermon. It was a statement. Sometimes the devil doesn't show up in chaos, he said. Sometimes he comes dressed in disappointment, packaged in expectations you can't fulfill. The crowd murmured. Some nodded. Others froze. He spoke of grace, imperfection, and judgment. But not once did he name Shaunie or apologize. Instead, he wrapped his message in theology, mixing confession with justification. You can love someone and still fail them. You can build a pulpit and still fall short at home. It was poetic. It was powerful. But to many, it sounded like deflection. Hours later, Shaunie posted a single quote on her Instagram story. Apologies without changed behavior are just manipulation. It was clear she had heard the sermon and wasn't moved. Online, people were divided. Some defended Keion, calling him a flawed man of God trying to heal. Others said his words were polished but empty. Either way, the message was clear. The perfect church couple was now standing on opposite sides of a public storm. Behind the applause, the quotes and the sermons, real life had to continue. Shaunie and Keion weren't just a couple. They were business partners, co-authors and co-founders of a growing faith platform. Their brand, built on unity, was now walking a tightrope between faith and fallout. Rumors of legal counsel began to swirl. Some blogs claimed she'd quietly met with attorneys to discuss financial separation, while others insisted the two were working through things privately. Nothing has been officially confirmed. Still, one truth remains undeniable. Something inside their marriage has shifted forever. For the public, it's a story about scandal. But for Shaunie, it's about reclaiming her peace. It's about learning that grace doesn't mean silence, and forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And as the dust begins to settle, one thing is clear. The woman who once stood beside the pulpit is now standing in her own power. Shaunie O'Neal's story is no longer about being someone's wife. It's about being her own woman, wiser, stronger, and unshaken by the chaos around her. Because sometimes, God doesn't remove you from the fire to protect you. He lets you walk through it so the world can see that you were built to survive it. And in the case of Shaunie O'Neal, survival doesn't look silent anymore. It looks reborn.